Hey guys, what is up and welcome to another episode of League Tips. A lot of people have been asking me to make a video about where to ward and how to ward in lanes such as middle, bottom, and even top lane. So I want to start off this series by talking to you guys about the bottom lane and where I think the proper wards should be placed depending on which side you're playing on. So with that in mind, let us jump straight into the blue team's side and where you should place the wards if you're playing on this team. So here is the bottom lane on Summoner's Rift as we know it. So like I said, assuming you're playing on the left team, these are the places where I recommend you put down wards. So the first ward placement is in this bush right here, and you can usually be safe with this one without having to really put much more wards. However, there will be certain situations, for example, if the jungler is known to be very aggressive, or if you feel like it just may not be enough and you need more coverage just to ensure you don't get ganked unexpectedly. The second warding spot I want to cover is pretty much a replacement for the first one I mentioned, and you can choose either or. The reason you would want the first one over this one is because it's easier and takes less time, and you can also see any sneaky junglers trying to go into that bush for the gank. However, the second one obviously does offer more vision for your team. On top of this one also covers the dragon area, which is very important, and this tends to be the most common spot to put down pinks to control this area. If your mid laner happens to ward the area I've marked on the map with the arrow just now, you can usually get away with this next spot I'm about to tell you. And this spot is the tribush area, and the reason I can say you can usually get away by not warding that, assuming your mid laner put the ward where the arrow is because that will usually give you enough vision to see someone coming from this area to begin with, and you will see it a lot sooner. So warding the tribush on the blue team is not nearly as important as compared to if you're playing on the purple side team. But that's not to say that you shouldn't ward the tribush area, assuming your mid laner does not ward the area where the arrow is. And now the second last spot that's a pretty good spot to put a ward in, assuming you're on the blue side, is in this bush right here. The reason you want to put one here is because you can see the jungler trying to come in for the lane gank, and you can try and prevent it by obviously seeing them and backing off. Now the last spot I want to mention to ward is in this bush right here. Now obviously this is going to be the most riskiest one, as you can potentially die or get caught from doing this, and it will take quite a bit of time to walk all the way over there, put the ward down, and walk back. However, on the contrary, you can also put it down from the river, but it will not reach the tribush, but it can also be a pretty good indicator nonetheless. So these are the main warding spots that I want to cover with you guys for the blue team, so take this into consideration. Don't forget, the first circle is pretty important, but you can also get away by switching between either that one or the second circle beside dragon. The tribush area is not as important, assuming your mid laner does ward properly, but if they don't, then you most likely need to ward that as well. And then we have the one in the bush inside the lane. This is important because not only does it let you see the support trying to put sneaky attacks on you or your ADC, but it will also let you see enemy junglers trying to come in there for a sneaky in-lane gank. And the last ward I talked about is in the tribush behind the enemy turret. This is important but very risky to put in because not only does it let you see an enemy jungler coming in to a lane gank, but it can also show you people like Zac, even Jarvan or Fiddlesticks waiting in the back trying to jump over and come in very quickly for a lane gank. Now let's move on to the purple team and where I think you should put down the wards to be safe from the enemy jungler and ganks in general. A lot of the ward positions are similar, if not the same, as for the blue team, but there are certain differences that are very important to cover. Alright, so jumping straight to the ward spots. Like I said, in the blue team, tribush is not super important. However, if you're playing on the purple team, it's probably the most important place to ward. The reason is because obviously the left side is not your jungler anymore, and that's a pretty common area for the enemy jungler to want to come through because not only is it easiest for them, but it's also the shortest distance. Unfortunately for the purple team, you almost always need to have two wards on at the same time. The first one being in the tribush and the second one being either the one you see right now or of course the one in the dragon pit. But let's talk about these two spots for a second. The first circle that you saw in that small bush is not as important, and usually you can get away with just putting it there and not necessarily putting in the tribush, but this will give you less time to react if the enemy jungler is coming from that area. So with that in mind, I highly recommend skipping this bush and usually putting it in the tribush, but also putting it on dragon. This will require extra wards, but it will almost ensure your safety. The next spot is very similar to the one that I mentioned for the blue team, and this is putting it inside the lane at the very end of the second brush. The reasoning for putting it here is exactly the same as the reasoning I just went over for the blue side, so definitely refer to that one if you need to. And the last spot I want to mention to place a ward is in this bush right here, and this is pretty much the mirrored version of what I mentioned for the blue team when I've said to put it in the enemy's tribush. This one of course being quite the risky one and also takes a while to put down, but if you do happen to put a ward there, it will give you quite a bit of time to react to the enemy jungler trying to come in for a lane gank. On top of this, it will also let you see when the enemy jungler is doing the double golems just to give vision and potentially know where they might go next. But these are the main ward spots that I want to cover with you guys for the purple team. Let's go over it one more time quickly. So the tribush here is extremely important, and you almost always want to have this warded if you're playing on the purple side. You can usually combo this ward with the ward in the dragon area, and you can be pretty safe with that. The other option that you have is not warding the tribush or the dragon pit, but instead putting it in the small bush right beside the lane. But the negative effects of this is that you will see the enemy jungler jungler coming in quite late and you must react almost instantly. And even then, it's still very risky to escape alive or without taking a lot of damage. The next ward that I mentioned is putting it in the lane in the bush at the very end of it, and this one is to prevent the enemy jungler from coming in for a lane gank. This one's usually considered the easier and safer one to put down as opposed to the next one that I'll mention, which is of course in that small bush on the very left beside the golems. This one more or less serves the same purpose, but you will see the enemy jungler coming in a lot sooner, and you can also see when the enemy jungler does double golems and potentially know where they will go next. Alright guys, so that is it for this video, and this is where I recommend to put down wards for the bottom lane, whether you're a support or even the ADC. Please don't forget to throw in a like if you enjoyed this episode and to even share it with your friends, and tell me if you want to see middle or top lane next for warding. But as always, I hope you guys enjoyed this and I'll see you next time. Peace.